Well, you won't say it for me, so I will say it for myself. So you were wrong. Senator Brown was wrong, and I was correct. The reality is, they can't lecture me. Me who sat at John Maxwell's feet at JC and did civics in the 1960s, using Lenny Ruddock's book, Civics for Young Jamaica. I invite you to go read Lenny Ruddock's book, Civics for Young Jamaicans.
I want to make a couple of points. The Minister of Finance opened the budget debate, I believe it was the 12th of March. I was overseas at the time and watching it online. On that day, this appropriation bill was tabled. I stand corrected if I've gotten the date slightly wrong. He gave his opening presentation. I believe the shadow spokesman on finance went next a couple days later. The leader of the opposition went a few days after that. And then I believe the Prime Minister and finally the Minister of Finance closed the debate on the 26th of March. By my estimation, we were looking at what, about 2 weeks? 2 weeks when the bill sat in its errand state on the table of the lower house. As I understand it, the error was picked up after we passed it by the very technical officers in the ministry who, as a matter of course, were reviewing what came back to them. The correction has come and it has come fast. But Mr. President, for all of the scrutiny and for all of the holding government to account, none of my opposition colleagues, neither in the House nor in this chamber, picked it up. I can say this chamber. I can very much say this chamber because like I did, Senator Brown, you'll get your chance. And when you get it, you can be very loud. The bill sat in the lower house for over 2 weeks. It came to the Senate and we voted it. We voted on it then. And since voting on it, it's been another passage of time. So we thank the officers in the Ministry of Finance who picked it up. But let us not politicize this. Because though the error may not have occurred before, it's not a difficult error to make. And I don't want us to politicize unfairly something that in the normal course of putting these documents together could have happened to anyone under any administration. And I do not trivialize the import of having an accurate appropriations bill before the Parliament. But what I reject, Mr. President, is the use of language like unconstitutional, when my colleagues on that side know very well that nobody in this chamber can pronounce any unconstitutionality on any act of Parliament. That, Mr. President, is the purview of the courts of Jamaica, not the Parliament. The Parliament passes law. It is the court who interprets law to determine whether the law comports with the provisions of the Constitution. And whenever that language is used on that side, Mr. President, there is a tendency to use the language without providing any evidence as to why there is any view that it is unconstitutional. You must stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Okay? Stop it. The Jamaican people demand more and they demand better. Stop it. If you get up and make a claim, support it. Don't just get up and use adjectives. I'm always wary of adjective users in this chamber who only use adjectives but provide no evidence. Mr. President, this is a simple matter to correct a transcription error, to get on with the people's business. I urge my colleagues to let us get on with the people's business and stop wasting time in the name of politics.
Senator Lambert Brown. Thank you, Senator Golden Campbell.
Mr. President, may I congratulate you on the high office, the high chair that you occupy. As you know, they say a busher for a couple of minutes is still a busher. Mr. President, I don't know why my friend, Senator Golden Campbell, have chosen to be so critical of the Member of Parliament for Northwest St. Andrew, the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Dr. Nigel Clark. It is Dr. Nigel Clark who, in the Memorandum of Objects and Reasons, said the following: this bill seeks to amend the Appropriation Act 2014 to exclude all expenditure classified as statutory expenditure in accordance with sections 116(3) and 4 of the Constitution of Jamaica. So it is Nigel Clark, Dr. Nigel Clark, my friend, the Minister of Finance, who raised the issue of constitutionality. And then, shouting from the top of our voice, Senator Golden Campbell wants us on this side to be silent. Well, this senator is not going to be silent. I took an oath to uphold the Constitution of this country, and I intend so to do. Mr. President, Senator Golden Campbell must be the last person to lecture me or us on this side about the Constitution. I remember a debate in this chamber over state of emergency, and I said that the government shouldn't blame the opposition. They could go and renew the state of emergency. A former Attorney General sitting in this chamber, my friend Senator Bryan, said that my suggestion was unconstitutional. And guess who echoed it? Senator Golden Campbell. She, not the courts, declared that I was unconstitutional. Not the courts. And guess what, President? Guess what? The Cabinet of Jamaica, no doubt with the advice of the current Attorney General, renewed the SOE the day after it expired. And that's considered to be constitutional. So you were wrong. Senator Bryan was wrong, and I was correct. Well, you won't say it for me, so I will say it for myself. The reality is, they can't lecture me Me who sat at John Maxwell's feet at JC and did civics in the 1960s, using Lenny Ruddock's book, Civics for Young Jamaica, I understand the Constitution. I invite you to go read Lenny Ruddock's book, Civics for Young Jamaicans. Don't come and lecture me about Constitution. And don't lecture Nigel Clark either, because he, with the full authority of the cabinet, wrote the memo of objects and
you know, you can present your point without being so ungracious, you know.
President, I don't come here to be gracious or ungracious now. I come here to speak truth to power. President, I leave my colleague, Senator Scott Motley, to nice it up for now. But as for me, I am going to give you the unvarnished truth. I'm not going to shout like Senator Golden. But the reality is, she said we shouldn't speak about the constitutionality. Mr. President, this Senate has been called today because of another unconstitutional bill that was passed by us. Passed by the House and by us. Another unconstitutional bill. I remember the vigor I put up against a NIDS bill, certified as constitutional.
Senator Brown, you know that you're going to say that I'm troubling you, but remember I wasn't here. The appropriations bill was actually passed in the Senate here, so you all look on it and never see the mistake.
I wasn't here, sorry.
Oh.
I had an accident and I wasn't here.
Well, I know.
And I might not have seen it. But President,
okay, all right, no problem.
you were here, you know.
No, I wasn't here.
My apology. I withdraw that. The JC boys weren't here. The JC boys weren't here. So the RS would have picked it up. Mr. President, another unconstitutional bill, like the NIDS, like the SOE, another unconstitutional act, like the resignation of senators. And there's another decision of the court to come next week, Friday, as to whether or not the retirement of certain public officers that was amended, the extension of the tenure of certain public officers, whether that meet the Constitution. It may or may not. But the point is, in a litigious society, that's a matter that has gone to the court. We await with bated breath the decision of the court, the Constitutional Court, which we are told will come next Friday. So, President, I am on record, whether I sat on that side or this side, to speak out against validation bills. Because those validation bills indicate that something was not right in how we treat with these matters. Something wrong when we have to come back and validate actions. One of the most recent validation, well, we didn't go by the validation route, but we amended the Road Traffic Act, was when the courts ruled that we were, as government, charging motorists more money than was allowed by law. That was challenged in the court. The court ruled that the government was acting illegally. The government scrambled. They decided to come with a validation bill. They called a meeting, special meeting of the House on a Friday. The House on a Friday. So you, Mr. President, had to adjourn your Senate meeting at 10 o'clock, facilitate the House meeting on that Friday, and then resume a meeting of the Senate. And the same Friday, it called Chaka Chaka government to pass not a validation bill because of the confusion in government, but an amendment to the Road Traffic Act. So it's not the first time we're getting these blunders. It's not the first time we're getting these blunders. And so, this blunder, which moves to the level of the constitutional breach, is but another thing that the Ministry of Finance has gotten wrong. And Mr. President, there are a number of things in recent times that the Ministry of Finance has gotten wrong. Mr. President, my intervention is to try and call upon the ministry officials, call upon the minister, call upon public bodies to do right by the citizens of the country, to obey the rules of law. Mr. President, this blunder at finance by itself may appear to be transcription. But have there been other blunders? When a minister of government is sent a report from a regulatory agency, but that report can't be found in the ministry, hidden away, let me take away the hidden, subsequently found after the minister himself searched a number of filing cabinets, something is wrong with the ministry. When an important report, like the SSL report from FSC, Financial Services Commission, to the minister, couldn't be found, and Usain Bolt has lost billions. Mr. President, the census is the responsibility of the Ministry of Finance. That is anachronic, as Ezra Mill would say. That is anachronic. You're not counting the people you're supposed to count. So that's two things. Two other blunders in the Ministry of Finance. Mr. President, the Auditor General, in the long-delayed report, delayed because presiding officer of Parliament didn't release it, said that the ministry, essentially that's what it's saying, the Ministry of Finance is presiding over a procurement policy that allow $400 million in taxpayers' money to be used to pay rent for an occupied building. That's a third blunder. In addition to this one, something is wrong in the Ministry of Finance. Mr. President, when the Auditor General says what's happening at the FSC, and the Gleaner report called it free fall, money going left, right, and center at FSC, Ministry of Finance responsible for that ministry. Something is wrong with the Ministry of Finance. Senator Gill, when public sector workers' increments is declared to be taken away, but for the fight of people like you and the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Union, for it to be restored, something is wrong in the Ministry of Finance. Mr. President, when we decide to remove GCT from imported goods, raw food, without consulting our farmers and other stakeholders, something is wrong in the Ministry of Finance. When the Ministry of Finance recommend a reduction in JUTC fares because it would impact inflation, but it didn't to the extent so declare, something is wrong in the Ministry of Finance. Mr. President, when the Minister of Finance promised to have FBI investigate SSL, and we get no report from FBI, something is wrong in the Ministry of Finance. What has happened to that FBI report? And when we're told that additional arrests at SSL are imminent, but doesn't take place, something is wrong. Something is wrong. So it's not just transcription error. Structurally, fundamentally, something is wrong at the ministry. All of these things I just outlined has happened under the minister, Nigel Clark. All of these things. Something wrong. And as a senator, it's my duty to bring it to this parliament, bring it to the country, that all is not well. Too many errors, too many blunders, and many of them are very costly. You see, Minister, when we have to pay back traffic ticket money, that means the beds that we so surely need in the hospitals, not available. Patient then told, no bed available. Go home. Or you might buy a cardboard and sleep in the corridor at Cornwall Regional. $500 for the cardboard? So, Mr. President, something is wrong at the ministry. For the first time, such an error takes place in 62 years of independence. Minister, I don't want it to happen again. So I'm bringing to you that this is not just a transcription issue. It's a fundamentally constitutional issue. And it's not just at Ministry of Finance. How can the Attorney General certify that the appropriation bill was constitutional when obviously it wasn't? Was there a lacking in due diligence by those who are charged under the Constitution to certify that bills coming from the Parliament are proper? You know, Mr. President, that's a dangerous thing. Because the next thing you will hear is that a government department acts contrary to the law, but the Attorney General office certifies it. And Senator Bryan, you know I do my research. There's a particular matter, Mr. President, that a government agency acted wrongfully, unlawfully on. And the Attorney General's chambers has told that agency, who acted contrary to the law, that they have no legal or moral, listen up, no legal or moral duty to correct it. Let me say it. I do not think you will agree, Senator Bryan, that a moral issue, the morality of a decision, is a legal issue. So to say they have no legal or moral duty to make the changes and to conform with the law of the country tells me that the Attorney General of Chamber, which is capable of making errors, You leave me alone to this. This is not the SOE in which you was wrong. You know, Attorney General Carl Rattray once wrote a directive to the Ministry of Labour on a matter of industrial relations. And I wrote back to the ministry saying that the Attorney General's views was really politics dressed up in legal brief. To call Rattray's respect, he didn't pursue his opinion. And the courts every day has shown that opinions of attorney generals are not infallible. Oftentimes it is. Oftentimes it is. And so, Mr. President, I'm not surprised that the opinions of the Attorney General is not being shared widely on a matter relating to reports coming to the Parliament. Maybe there's a lack of confidence